Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're breaking down a really critical issue in Africa's largest democracy. It's a crisis of voter apathy that's so deep it's shaking the very foundations of the nation's future. So, let's get into it.
Okay, let's just start with this one. Staggering number, 89%. That's the share of Nigeria's entire population that effectively sat out the last election. Now, this isn't just low turnout we're talking about. This is a near total disconnect. It's like a democracy running on fumes.
And to really get a sense of the scale here, just look at this. In a nation of 225 million people, only 25 million actually cast a vote in 2023. That means about 11% of the country made the decision for the other 89%. You know, this isn't just a statistic. It's a massive symptom of a nation in serious distress.
So what does this actually look like for that huge 89% who stay home? It's not just a random decision. For many, it's a whole planned day of avoidance. Let's kind of walk through what a typical election day is like in Nigeria for most people.
It actually starts the night before. People are out stocking up on groceries, they're renewing their TV subscriptions, they're basically preparing for a self-imposed lockdown. The whole goal? To have absolutely no reason to step outside their front door when the polls open at 8 a.m.
And if you were out on the streets, you wouldn't see these long, hopeful lines at polling stations. Nope. Instead, you'd probably see young people heading to football fields. For them, scoring a goal is just a more tangible, a more immediate win than casting a vote. And that really says a lot about where their priorities are. And it's not just the youth. You've got a lot of older Nigerians who just choose to completely disconnect. They literally sleep through the most critical hours of the democratic process, only waking up after the polls have already closed. It's like a quiet protest, a retreat from a system that they feel has just let them down time and time again.
This isn't about people being lazy. It's despair. But it's despair that's become wrapped up in the everyday routine. It's the collective sigh of a people who have basically come to believe that taking part is just pointless. And that feeling, well, it has some deep historical roots.
So the big question is, how did Nigeria get to this point? I mean, this level of despair doesn't just pop up overnight. To really get the why, we need to look back at the history that has slowly, systematically, just dismantled public trust. This timeline, wow, it tells a story of both hope and heartbreak. It all starts in 1999 with this big return to democracy. Turnout even peaks at 69% in 2003. But then, the slide begins. It's this steady decline driven by violence, economic pain, and a string of messed up elections, all hitting rock bottom in 2023 with a turnout under 27%. So this downward spiral is really fueled by four big things that are all tangled up. First, there's just this deep, deep distrust in a system that most people believe is rigged. Then, that distrust is made worse by a very real fear of violence at the polling stations. On top of that, you've got crushing economic pressure that makes just surviving the day a much bigger priority than voting. And all of this is built on a cultural hangover from military rule that basically taught citizens that their voices don't matter anyway.
This apathy, it creates a vicious cycle where the silence of the majority has really severe, really tangible consequences for the entire nation. So let's talk about the price of that silence.
The result of all this silence is just stark. The current president won with only 8.8 million votes. Let that sink in for a second. That's less than 10% of the adult population deciding the future for a nation of 225 million. It's not just a legitimacy gap, it's a chasm. And this all creates this powerful and deeply ironic situation. On the one hand, Nigerians demand good roads, stable power, and an end to corruption. But on the other hand, many people engage in the very behaviors that weaken the state, from not voting to dodging taxes to accepting bribes. It's this national contradiction that just stifles any real progress.
So how in the world do you break a cycle of despair like this? It's pretty clear that just telling people go vote is not going to cut it anymore. The solutions have to be as big and as radical as the problem itself.
The challenge is just immense. We're not just talking about getting people to the polls. We're talking about reigniting a sense of civic duty in a population that's been conditioned to believe their actions are useless. So how do you fan the flames of democracy when they've been reduced to just embers?
Well, the proposed solutions are pretty direct and honestly provocative. First, what if you linked voting to tangible benefits, like making it a prerequisite for certain jobs or welfare? Second, you have to fix the broken logistics of the voting process itself. Third, you launch huge targeted education campaigns to empower voters, especially youth and women. And finally, and this one's crucial, you bring the hammer down on election fraud to start the long, slow process of rebuilding that shattered trust.
So in the end, you can see the incredibly high cost of this silence, and you can also see a potential path forward. The solutions are on the table, but they leave us with one final crucial question. The ballot is power, but after decades of letting it just gather dust, will Nigeria finally choose to wield it?